Thank you for that interesting music.
Of course, of course. I guess we can get started, or should we wait a little bit more?
Gabriel, go ahead. We're still waiting on someone from Christine from Kenya, but go ahead, please.
Okay, sure. Let me share the PowerPoint that was provided for today. Share the screen. Hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, firstly, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Gabriel Mcbub, and I support knowledge management and communications for the KICS Africa 19 Hub. And I'm based at UNESCO ICPA in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. So today we continue with our community of practice on implementing competency-based education and curriculum in education systems. Today's session will be focused on assessing learning effectively and innovatively in competency-based education. For the agenda today, we will begin with a brief overview of the hub, followed by a group photo. The day's topic and objectives will be introduced by Philemon Sayang. Thank you so much for joining us from the Ministry of Education of Gambia, before my colleague Marianne presents an opening activity. Following that, Christina Kello will lead a discussion on assessment types before we hear from Ann Negatia and Ansu Sanyang, who will share the country experiences of Kenya and the Gambia, respectively. This will be preceded by a Q&A discussion before we conclude with a survey led by Hundessa Tafessa of the KICS Hub, as well as a review of the digital repository. As many of you already know, the Knowledge and Innovation Hub is a platform for partner countries to share knowledge, innovations, and good policies and practices in education with each other. The hub is supported by a joint endeavor between the Global Partnership for Education and the International Development Research Center of Canada. It comprises of 3 consortium partners: UNESCO's International Institute for Capacity Building in Africa, UNICEF Eastern and Southern Office, and African Union's Pan-African Institute for Education for Development. The hub covers 6 themes, including teaching and learning, learning assessment systems, early childhood education, gender equality, equity and inclusion, and the data challenge. In terms of the geographic reach, the hub covers 18 countries, including some of the following, which are Ethiopia, Eswatini, Gambia, Ghana, Kenya, Lesotho, Liberia, Malawi, Mozambique, Nigeria, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Somalia, South Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. And before we move ahead, we would like to use this opportunity to ask everyone present to switch on their camera for a group photo. And so if it's possible, and if you have the bandwidth, we please invite you to switch on your camera so we can identify who is here today, and we can have a group photo. Right, I think we're nearly there. I think maybe if a couple of us switch on our cameras, we'll be there. Wonderful. Maybe 1 or 2. Beatrice, Joyce, if you're able to switch on your cameras, it's a great opportunity to see those smiles. Oh, wonderful. I love the Gambia team together. All right, 3, 2, 1. And the 3, 2, 1. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So without further delay, I would like to now introduce the facilitators for today's session: Philemon Sanyang of the Ministry of Education of the Gambia and Christina Kello of Global E-Schools and Communities Initiative in Kenya. I would now kindly like to ask Philemon to introduce today's topics and objectives. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gabriel. Good afternoon from the Gambia. Welcome to yet another interesting session of KICS, Community of Practice. First of all, I would like to welcome my colleagues from my directorate here who have come to join, and thank you, my brother Ansu, for accepting to present on behalf of the Gambia. Today's discussion will be on assessing learning effectively and innovatively in the competency-based education. That's our topic for today: assessing learning effectively and innovatively in the competency-based education. And the objective for the meeting will be to refresh and strengthen our understanding of competency-based education and 21st century learning, as well as to share and discuss national examples of assessment, strengthening especially in competency-based education system and the context of policy reforms, which we will talk more on since we are on a reform process. The objective of the outcome of the meeting rather will be country representatives will share relevant knowledge about assessment practices and policies from their context. And also country representatives will identify new policy and practice options for their context. As part of the outcome also, country representatives will strengthen their knowledge of competency-based assessment of learning in the 21st century, which I believe all those in attendance will be very interested in listening to and will also learn from what countries are going to present today. Please sit, listen attentively, gather your questions, and please learn from these wonderful and brilliant presenters. Listen attentively to what they're going to say, especially from our own context, the Gambia. And we are also very proud that Kenya is going to present as an evidence-based country. Since they are a reference country, we studied a lot from Kenya's reform that we are also trying to put into practice in our new curriculum reform. Thank you. Back to you, Gabriel.
Many thanks, Philemon. I believe maybe let me pass on the floor to Mary Ann.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. Philemon, thank you for that wonderful opening. That was brilliant. And I just love how you called us to listen to the evidence from Kenya and the example of the Gambia. You're very right. We can learn a lot from these two countries. Colleagues, I'll just take you through a couple of minutes of checking our understanding of major types of assessment. So I'm going to show, we have a couple of flashcards here. This might take you back to school days where we take multiple choice quizzes and we check our definitions and our understanding. So I'm going to show some definitions of types of assessment on my screen. And I'd like you to raise your hand if you know the type of assessment that matches this definition. So I'll be checking for your hands. And we want you to raise your hand if you know the definition, if you can match it to the type of assessment. This is the first one. This type of assessment takes place during learning and is used to plan or modify further instruction. It is usually ungraded and ongoing. Who knows this type of assessment? These are the choices. Any hands? I see Philemon has a hand up. No one else? Go ahead, Philemon, you go first.
Yes, it's the formative type of assessment, formative assessment.
Okay, group, is she right? Everyone, is she correct?
Yes.
You can unmute.
Yes.
She's correct. Yes, very good. So a formative assessment, it tells us ongoing information so teachers can modify their instruction. Very good, Philemon. This is another question. This is a type of assessment designed to provide teachers with information about students' prior knowledge and misconceptions before beginning a learning activity. Any hands?
Fatu wants to try. Fatu from the Gambia.
Fatu.
Yes.
I think this type of assessment is called diagnostic assessment because the teacher wants to make some findings to find the prior knowledge of the kids because we believe that they are not empty. They must have an experience before coming to the class. So anyway, I believe it's diagnostic assessment.
Okay, is Fatu right, everyone? Did she get it right?
Fatu got it right.
Yes.
Fatu got
Okay,
it
John
right,
says she's right. Let's see.
Yeah.
It's good.
Is it diagnostic? Yes, very good. Good job, Fatu. Okay, this is
Thank you.
another one. Let's see some new country now. No more from the Gambia. Let's hear some other country. They're very good today. You have to give others a chance. Okay, I see John's hand.
This,
John,
I
what do
will
you think
answer
this
this one.
is?
Yeah, this one is to call this one for this one, a classroom system that enables students to access their own learning and the learning of their peers is called assessment as learning.
Assessment as learning. Okay, so this is
Yeah.
when students assess their own learning and the learning of their peers, assessment as learning. What does everyone else think? Did John get it right?
Yes, he's right.
Okay, Anne from Kenya, let's see. Excellent job. Here's a new one. This is an innovative approach to assess students' demonstration and display of their skills, knowledge, and process of learning, as well as their final learning product. So both the process of learning and their learning product, looking at both of them and the demonstration of their knowledge. What do people think? Is it summative, formative, authentic, project-based? We're checking their demonstration, their display of their learning process. Any
think
hands
this,
up?
For me, I think I make this one is to be 4. Project-based.
And what is
assessment.
4?
Yeah, I'm
Project-based.
just trying this one. Okay.
Okay, we have Philemon, Fatu, John, and Kenya, sorry, Anne taking up the spotlight here. Does anybody else want to come in? What do others think? Is John correct? Is this project-based assessment?
Answer.
We
Yes,
think
I
it
think
is
so.
project-based, as you have said.
Let's see.
Because
Good job. Yes, we got a green check mark. Excellent. Now let's have someone new this time. This is an
Yeah,
assessment of
okay.
students' knowledge and skills in a real-life complex context. What do you think it is? Diagnostic, formative, authentic, summative? A new person this time.
Authentic.
Authentic, let's see. Good job. That's it. Correct. What about when students evaluate their own understanding, knowledge, skills, progress, and questions? Joyce, Janet, George, Saboku, Gresham, Damaris.
Self-assessment.
Let's check. Is this self-assessment? That's correct, when they assess their own knowledge. Now, this is a type of learning situation in which students take primary responsibility for explaining their own strengths, needs, progress, questions, their own learning to their parents or teachers, instead of their parents or teachers explaining it to the child. So the child explains their own learning and progress instead of the parents or teachers explaining their learning and progress. I see Gresham has a hand up. Gresham Rubin.
Student-led conferences.
Student-led conferences. Is he correct? Anyone else want to say whether he's correct?
Yes. Yes.
Is he correct?
It's correct.
Okay.
It's correct.
Yes, very good. He's correct. Excellent job. Okay, so I think we did well. It says that we got them right. Okay, very good. So we checked our understanding of the major types of assessment. There are others, of course, but this is a way to check, cover the bases. The assessment cycle, you can begin really anywhere in the assessment cycle because it's ongoing, it's around, it's not point A to point Z. You can start at any point in time. So if you begin with the teaching step, after we teach, we have to then measure what our learners have learned. And we have to reflect on what we have measured and what the results of their learning have been, so that we can plan and improve this assessment. So it's an ongoing circle. And that's why formative assessment is so important, is that with formative, we can form learning. We can inform ourselves and form learning and form our own lesson plans to improve and help our learners to understand the whatever it is, the concept, the chapter, a particular skill. They can improve upon it for next time. So we really have to talk about assessment cycles and not just exams at the end of the year, but so that the results of that measurement that we have taken informs and plans for the future learning. So it's important that we keep in mind that assessment has to be a cycle, that we have to learn something from the students' assessment. It's not only that they have to improve something, they have to do better, that we also have to plan and improve our own teaching as the cycle shows us. Does anyone have any questions, or do they want to discuss any of the assessment types that we just saw? Does anyone want to share anything about anything we've just looked at? Maybe authentic or student-led conferences. Does anyone have a question, or they want to raise any point?
Yes.
Yes, John,
Yes,
go
Mayor.
ahead.
Just like
Sorry, John, can't hear you.
when teachers normally use the summative. There is no need of still teachers using the summative type of learning to do assessments.
John, personally, I couldn't hear you very well. I didn't get your full point. Could you say that again, please?
Okay,
Sorry.
I said since we have so many types of assessment, and but in the content-based, the ones we used to have before now is summative. Teachers only conduct assessment at the end of learning, or maybe at the end of a particular academic year, or a particular after the end of learning. So I'm saying now that we are trying to bring competency-based, so it means there is no need for summative assessment anymore in the classroom. That's my question.
Interesting point, John. Does anybody want to comment on what John has said, that there's no point, there's no place now for summative assessment in the classroom because we have so many other types of better assessment. There's no place for summative. Anyone want to comment?
Hello? Yes, I think even with competency-based curriculum, the summative assessment is very important in it, because at the end of the day, you need to know what the children can do. For example, it's about if it is about portraying skills or showing the skills or competencies in certain areas, they need to be able to show that. For example, if you use let's say a journal, or if you use a checklist or whatever, it still comes to summative assessment. So whether it is competency-based or whatever, it is important that we have a summative assessment. It's still part of it. We still have to assess summatively. Because remember, we have to report to stakeholders like parents, to how well their children can, perform certain things in the school. So summative assessment is important, even in competency-based curriculum. Thank you.
Very interesting. I think that we will always live in an environment where there will be some type of summative assessment. So it's one tool, but it should not be the only tool that we rely on, that everything is only based on the exam at the end of the year or the test. Everything has to be built towards the test. But I think that there's always going to be some type of summative assessment because countries want to gather information on their students' learning for large scale data sets to assess overall how students are progressing. Even during COVID, we saw that we needed to have summative assessments after COVID to assess learning loss. So, but I think, John, a good way of looking at it is that summative should not be our main focus. We have many other ways of using assessments, and it's not the only way, and it shouldn't be the only way that we focus on, that it's all about the exam or the test. But Gresham, did you want to say something? Gresham Rubin? I saw a hand up as well.
Messi's hand is up. Okay.
I'm around. I'm around.
Sorry, I wasn't able to hear that. I saw several people at once.
Yes, Philemon's hand is up and Messi.
Okay.
Their hands are up. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Philip.
One of the staff in attendance wants to ask a question, please. She's Michelle.
It's about the project-based assessment. Now, here in the Gambia, we use that assessment usually when we assess the technical area where we have this TVEC. So I was asking whether it will be applied to other areas like the core subjects, because they use it only for art and craft, metal work, woodwork, home economics, and so on. So I was just asking is a question, whether it will be with this competency-based, whether it will be applicable for all subject areas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's an excellent question. In the school that I used to teach at for many years, we did projects in all subjects, including in the core subjects too. We didn't necessarily follow the competency-based curriculum in the way that it's in other countries, but we had in all subjects, including in the core subjects, maths, languages, projects were built in all of them, and you could assess learning in any subject. I think it's possible in any subject to have a project. It's about showing the skills and the knowledges that they're learning in the subject, whatever subject it is, in a applied project-based way. Maybe if we have examples from countries about project-based assessment, that'd be good to hear, maybe what other countries have done. But I have seen projects in all subjects before, even the core subjects. Does anybody want to comment on that, whether it's possible to have project-based assessment in core subjects? Is it possible to have projects in core subjects?
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Okay, maybe. Yes, I see Christine. Christine, did you want to comment on that question from the Gambia?
Yeah, thanks, Marianne. I'm sorry I'm late, but I was able to pick up. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Yeah, I think it's possible for us to use project-based assessments in other learning areas. I'm thinking of a social subject like English, for example. I may decide to ask my students to come up with a poem, and then I will assess them based on how they have articulated what we have learned in class. So going out researching, coming up with a poem, I think is a project. So them presenting is how they are presenting, and how the poem in poetry has been arranged is what I will be assessing during this time. So I have not asked them a written question. I have not done all that, but I'm using that poem, that particular poem that they have researched, written down based on our previous discussion as a class, so that I assess my learners. So yes, project-based assessments are possible in other learning areas and not just in hands to do kind of skills development kind of courses. Yes. Back to you, Marianne.
Thank you, Christine. There are so many examples from math, from science. In a way, project-based assessment is a little similar to authentic assessment, where we try to give students the chance to demonstrate and use their learning in a real-life applied situation. It can be as real as possible. The more real, then the more authentic the assessment gets. There's many ways to incorporate their math skills, their science skills, even in combined projects where the primary subject may be a science topic. They can still try to use their other subject skills too for demonstrating their mathematical skills and knowledge while also focusing on science. So projects are great ways for interdisciplinary learning as well. I see a couple more hands up. Mercy, would you like to have a chance to talk? From Malawi, I think. We can't hear you, sorry, you're on mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mercy,
Hello?
go ahead.
I just wanted to add what my friend said about not having a summative assessment anymore because I've got so many types of assessment. So I just wanted to know still more we need the summative one because we have seen each type of assessment has got its own purposes. So formative assessment has got its own purposes. Summative assessment, we know is for selection, for the we make important decisions from summative assessment. So I just wanted to add that even if we may have all these types of assessment, still more we need the summative assessment one because it also has its own purpose. We can make decisions, we can make selection, we can place the students. It's also for certification. So we cannot remove the summative assessment. It's supposed to be there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mercy. And Mercy, you said something interesting that we can use the summative assessment for the future. If we use it, it almost becomes a formative assessment then as well, or even diagnostic assessment. So the summative should not just be data that's stacked away to grade a student, and that's it. But if we use their learning, their assessment for future learning, it can become formative assessment. And it could even be diagnostic assessment. So we begin the next school year by at their starting point of the summative assessment from last year. So even summative can become a better tool if we use it well, using the data to inform students' learning. Philemon, I see your hand up. Do you want to comment on anything before we move on? We're almost done with this portion.
Yes, I have one of our staff who has a contribution. Please say go ahead.
Just to good afternoon. Just to say with regards to the summative assessment, I mean, you have presented as assessment as a cycle. Summative can be a step, right? To do that, to carry on with the type of assessment or whatever information you have from the summative can help you to adjust or change certain things, which I think is very important as a tool of assessment, as a form of assessment. The other aspect I wanted to talk about is the project. She talked about is it poetry in storytelling as well. We can use it as a project to see how best we can help our students to have certain competencies with regards to, storytelling, preparing stories, and even involved into research to see how best they can engage others, and also involve parents with storytelling. And the reality in the classroom can be moved to the community and engage them in acquiring certain competencies that will help them in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, very good idea. And authentic assessment is one that goes really well with competency-based education, authentic assessment, project-based assessment. But let me turn it over to Kenya now so we can see some real examples of this. So Christine, could I ask you to introduce our first speaker, from Kenya.
Thanks, Marianne. Okay, our next speaker is Anne Wanjiru. I call her Anne Gatia. Is Anne Gatia. She's the Senior Subject Officer at Kenya National Examinations Council and Coordinator for Competency-Based Assessment, Ministry of Education, Kenya. Thanks a lot, Anne. We are excited to have you here with us so that you can share some light on the different forms of assessments and those particularly that can be adopted for competency-based learning, and those that can also be adopted for any other kind of learning, because with the coming of a competency-based learning, I think it's almost an assumption that we are throwing out the old or traditional ways of teaching and coming up with new modern ways of teaching, which I don't think is true. We are improving what we already have. So Anne, thank you, and Karibu to take us to the next session.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on the country we are coming from. It's my pleasure to share some experiences of Kenya, the introduction of competency-based curriculum in Kenya. And briefly, I'll be sharing some of the things that we as Kenya and as the examination board have been able to bring on board, have been able to bring some changes. And I want to speak in terms of the kinds of assessment that we have embraced. But before I do that, I just want to say that Kenya has been able to reform its curriculum from the content-based curriculum to the competency-based curriculum since 2018. And it's being done in a phase-out approach in terms of grade by grade. And therefore, we have been able to reform all the way from pre-primary school. And now our learners are in grade 7. So they have the first cohort of competency-based curriculum. Learners have managed to complete primary school, and they have now entered this year into the next phase, which we are calling junior secondary. We can go to the next slide. So we are just trying to emphasize that assessments really are critical, and especially when we talk about competency-based assessments, because they help us to, or they help the teachers to know that learning is taking place and to be able to know when to move on to the next topic or strand. And the next slide, I'll be talking about assessment for learning, which we have already had with Marianne there, so I will not spend a lot of time. We have embraced the formative assessments in terms of assessment for learning, assessment as learning, authentic assessment, integrated assessment, inclusivity in assessment. We have also been able to unpack the core competencies, or what is globally known as the 21st century skills. And as a country, we have also been able to assess the core competencies and even the core values that are within our curriculum framework. And we have also introduced school-based assessments for grades 3, 4, 5, and 6. We can move on, and looking at our curriculum, the mission of our curriculum is to nurture every learner's potential and therefore ensure that we have engaged, empowered, and ethical citizen. So as for assessment, we ask ourselves, how then do we ensure that assessments are able to determine or to establish the competencies of every learner? We also ask ourselves, how will assessment ensure that we have empowered citizens, we have ethical citizens, and that brings about the paradigm shift in assessment to ensure that we achieve our vision. Next slide, when we go to the competency-based assessments, of course, this is not new to any of us, but we are saying that when we talk about competency-based assessment, it is the ability or the opportunities that we give to learners to apply the knowledge that they have learned, and more so to solve problems that are facing them in their school, in their society. And we find that to do this, then we have to embrace a different type of assessment than we have been doing. In Kenya, we have been concentrating or focusing more on the summative assessments that normally come at the end of a program. Like, for example, at the end of primary, at the end of secondary, at the end of probably a tertiary course. But for competency-based assessment, then we are saying that we need to assess on a continuous basis, and so that the feedback or the outcome can be able to inform learning. And also we have embraced assessment as learning, where we want the learner to be in charge of their own learning. We want the learner to first reflect on the kind of work that they have done. We want the learner to determine by themselves whether they have been able to achieve. And this is usually done by using certain assessment tools like assessment rubric, whereby the learner is provided with the task and even the scoring guide in advance, and therefore they are able to assess the work that they have been able to do and actually determine their progress of learning. So some of the paradigm shifts that we have brought on board in Kenya, the next slide, is that we have shifted from relying on only summative assessments, and we have embraced formative assessment. This we see by the fact that now we are assessing more frequently, right from grade 3. Grade 3 is the end of the early years tier of our curriculum. And therefore at grade 3, that is the end of lower primary, we want to find out the competencies that our learners have according to the general learning outcomes of the curriculum. And at that level, we are able to give a national assessment that actually tells us how much learning is taking place. Then all the way from grade 4, 5, and 6, then we give some formative assessments to the schools to be able to administer. I'll be speaking about that later. Another shift is that there is now emphasis on acquisition of competencies and values. Our competency-based curriculum framework actually emphasizes on value-based education and also ensuring that our learners can compete globally, and therefore a lot of emphasis on acquisition of the core competencies. For Kenya, we have come up with 7 core competencies that we are targeting, such as communication and collaboration, critical thinking and problem solving. We have creativity and imagination. We have competencies like digital literacy, self-efficacy, and learning to learn. And also we have a core competence that as a country, we find it useful, which we call citizenship. So you will find that in our assessments, we will consciously target to determine the acquisition of those competencies, and also some core values that are within our curriculum framework. We have de-emphasized grading and ranking, and therefore there is now more of qualitative reporting. And this is coming along through the formative assessments. So we now report in terms of performance levels. You are at level 1, you are either meeting the expectation or you are approaching expectation, etc. Another shift is that we are using a variety of assessment tools, therefore providing for flexibility and accessibility. Most of the times we were using just paper and pen, but now we have gone on board to bring in the projects, we have gone on to bring the journals, we have gone on to bring portfolio, We have embraced a lot of oral assessment when it comes to the languages, especially at the formative stages of upper primary and at the school level, and many, many others. So we are really saying that for you to really get the competencies of a learner, then one assessment or one format of assessment is not adequate. We need to vary, we need to give learners opportunity, and more so because we know that learners learn differently, and therefore we need to give them opportunities to express themselves. Then tasks requiring improvisation and using of locally available materials. We are talking about creativity, we are talking about imagination, we are talking about looking into issues of cost, and therefore most of the tasks that we are giving, we always ensure that we look into the issues of practicality. Is it practical in terms of resources? Then some of the innovations that, again, we have embraced is that we have relied for a long time on the Bloom's taxonomy, but now we are relying on the revised Bloom taxonomy, which is really gone a notch higher, and also other taxonomies as depth of knowledge. Again, we have also realized that we need to have ICT integration in our assessments to be able to achieve the core competence of digital literacy. And what we now do is that we normally develop the assessments and we upload those assessments on a web-based portal where each school can access using a username and password, and they download them. They either print them or they could use the digital devices that are within their schools, and therefore we do not distribute the assessments the way we do for the national examinations, making it less high stake, and also the schools can access them at will from our portal. Again, we use this portal for posting the results or the reports for learners. When we do some school-based assessments, we also analyze the results per school, not to rank, but just to give them feedback in terms of how difficulty or their difficulty index, their discrimination index, and the school is able to get specific feedback on how they fared on each of the questions that they did. And we have the national report that really speaks much about the general performance of each subject, and recommendations to the curriculum body, recommendations to the quality assurance, recommendations to other stakeholders. We have also brought on board the e-access that a learner could be able just to access directly, even without the help of the school. They can access the assessment tools online using their registration number or using the assessment number. I talked about reporting, that we are now emphasizing more on qualitative reporting, where we describe the performance more than the grading, where you give either a grade A or a percentage. Then we have integrated assessment, where we have now come up with having an interdisciplinary approach, whereby like at grade 3, where we have so many subjects, then we only assess maths and English, that is literacy and numeracy. But for the rest of the subjects, we combine them by giving a project and having a thematic approach. And so that we are able to show that learning is not, or the subjects are not in silos, but that you are able to draw experiences from certain subjects and so on. We can move on. Something else that we have been able to embrace is the authentic assessment. I think we already discussed this. And here is where we are trying to ensure that we are not learning as abstract as we have been learning, but that the learner is able to relate what they have learned, apply what they have learned into real life situations. So we are giving some open-ended questions and even context questions, whereby the learner now can be able to answer that, but within their context. Also making sure that, for example, if it is agriculture, then we ask them to do a real task that replicates what goes on in an agricultural farm. If it is home science, again, they actually conduct a practical, or they come up with a product. They can do a garment, they can do handkerchiefs, they can do something that really relates to real life. And when we talk about authentic assessment, why Kenya has really embraced it, it's because, we can go to the next slide, is because it gives the learners opportunity to apply knowledge instead of the kind of questions that we normally sometimes give in the national examinations that really require rote learning. We also focus more on the process. We want to see the process, not just the product. Again, with an authentic assessment, it gives room for stipulating the criteria and standards. So even the learner knows in advance that I am supposed to probably dispose waste in my school. So what is the criteria? What is the assessor looking out for? So we state all that, and the learner knows, and the learner also is able to adhere to that. Again, in authentic assessments, learners create new knowledge. So we give a project or we give a task that a learner is able to actually get an opportunity to develop their own knowledge. It is not restricted like you have a fixed kind of question or a fixed way of doing it, but you want to look out for their creativity. You want to look out for their problem-solving skills. You want to look out for their self-efficacy. Then the other advantage is that it is assessed real time with authentic assessment. The teacher is supposed to observe as the assessment is taking place, and follow the learner as they continue to record the performance of the learner. The feedback is immediate because the teacher is there marking, and they do not have to wait for processing of results. Then again, it provides a very good opportunity for self and peer assessments, because a lot of the authentic assessments requires that they work in pairs, they work in groups, and also requires them to do a lot of reflection on their work. Next slide. It's just trying to show, that slide is just trying to show that our citizens are appreciating the kind of assessments and the kind of learning that competency-based has brought on board. And you can see that comment there. They are saying that they are proud of. The learners are even competing among themselves, among the grades, whose garden is better than the other one. And in that way, we can see that they are able to apply what they have learned, and they are able to take that knowledge even to their homes. So learning is not just for examinations or to be used at the school level, but it is taken beyond the home. When we come to assessment, next slide, on the assessment of core competencies, I said that this is a very new area where most of the times we have not consciously assessed core competencies. But now we have embarked on developing assessment tasks that consciously target these core competencies. And how we do that is that, first of all, we look at the curriculum, we look at the learning outcomes, and then we ask ourselves, what core competence do you want to target? And then you develop a task borrowing from the learning experiences that are within the design, the curriculum design or the syllabus. And then you develop the assessment tool that you'll use to assess. And how we are doing this is that, first of all, it's difficult just to measure, for example, critical thinking and problem solving. So we have been able to break that competence using some indicators. What would be able, what would you look out for in a learner as they perform a particular task that they have actually acquired critical thinking and problem solving? And then we allow them to perform the task. We can go to the next slide. If you look at that context there, this is science, this is environmental education, and you give a context of where people are not disposing of waste very well. So that is the problem at hand. So you want them to apply critical thinking and problem solving. They need to solve that problem. So they have been taught about soil pollution, they have been taught about disposal of waste, they have been taught how to take care of the environment. And therefore they'll be expected to do some investigations, to do some research, and so that they are able to identify the kind of waste that is there and so on. And you can see the next picture there is showing when they have already done or they have cleared the waste, which now shows that they have already done the problem solving. We can go to the next slide just to show how then we assess that. So I said that first of all, you will determine, for example, that one was on soil pollution in farms around the school. You will determine suitable methods. So the learner will investigate what is the best way. And then we will ask what kind of tool will be used to assess that. And the indicators, just to make sure for you as an assessor, that will guide you to know that the learner has actually acquired, is that you'll be looking out whether the learner can follow instructions, whether the learner can seek for help when needed, whether they can explain to someone advice on suitable methods, whether they can find information, that they can do some research, and whether they can be able to have alternatives and be able to choose from those alternatives as they come up with the best alternative for solving the problem at hand. And there are many, many, many examples that we could give. That is just one of them. For each core competence, we have been able to break down the core competence into indicators. If it is communication and collaboration, how are you able to tell that a learner can communicate well, etc.? We can move on. Then the other innovation that Kenya has also, I think I talked about this one, is whereby we are coming up with a kind of a project. We call it integrated learning assessment. And we pick one, or we determine a thematic area. And then that thematic area draws from knowledge, skills, and attitudes that have been learned in different subjects. Just to show that for you to solve problems, then you need to combine knowledge and experiences from very different subjects. And the benefits of this is that when you use integrated assessment, then we are able to assess a number of learning outcomes, units, and targets and standards together. You do not have to. And then it's also motivating because it is a project that really helps the learners to research, to draw experiences from their various subjects. It requires them to go out, etc., etc. So how we do this is that we have been giving this at grade 3. We come up with a project. For example, I think last year we were able to give them a project, and the theme was patriotism, because Kenya, there were elections last year, so we tried to be as current as possible. And therefore, they were supposed to show patriotism, which is a value. They were also supposed to show how to share out things to the needy people in the society, come up with patriotic songs, come up with the meals from the home science that really speak into the Kenyan culture and something like that. So we could move on. I think I am almost through. I've already spoken into that. We could move on. I was just trying to show why really integrated assessment, instead of having each subject being assessed individually, then we try to integrate them so that, because that's the way the world is, that you normally, every day, you are always integrating for you to go to work, for you to perform, then you're always integrating knowledge. And I think I've already spoken into this, but the last bullet there, I think the integrated assessment is something that we have been adopting because it helps us to inculcate assessment of core competencies, values, the pertinent and contemporary issues. Like when there was COVID, we also came up with a task that was asking them how to sort issues around COVID, around hygiene, around their health, and that kind of thing. So it helps you, that project helps you to integrate quite a number of things. And the most important is that the tasks are always aligned to community service learning, which is something that has really been introduced in Kenya, just to make sure that the learning or what the learners have acquired is taken to the community. Then I want to speak next on school-based assessments. I think in my talking, I have already mentioned that, but school-based assessment is just one form of the formative assessment. But the difference here with the classroom assessment is that the classroom assessment is basically conducted fully by the classroom teacher. But with the school-based assessments, we standardize them as the examination body so that we can be able to check the competencies across the country. So we develop assessment items, we develop the guides, we develop the reporting procedures. And like I said, we upload them on our online portal, and the schools access them, they mark, and they then upload the scores on our portal. What is good about this is that we have allowed flexibility. We don't timetable like the national examinations, because we believe that these school-based assessments are supposed to help improve learning and teaching. And therefore we allow flexible periods of administration, especially the projects we give like 2 months, and we give a good guide of how that works. The focus again with the school-based assessments is that we want to assess the higher order thinking skills, and so that we are able to see the demonstration of application of knowledge, skills, and attitude. And to do this, we use the practical, the projects, the orals, authentic tasks, and also journals and portfolios. And lastly, the other innovation, really not an innovation, but something that we really have at heart as Kenya, is inclusivity in assessment. We appreciate that we have learners who are either gifted and talented. We also appreciate that we have learners who have disabilities. And therefore, in our assessments, we adapt them to accommodate the learners. Next slide. We adapt the assessments to ensure that all learners are taken care of. So we look at our learners who have physical disability, hearing disability, mental disabilities, and those who have even multiple disabilities. And we ensure that we adapt either the environment or we adapt the task, so that if they have physical disability and they're supposed to do probably a construction question, then we adapt the question, but set the same or assess the same skill that we are giving to the learners who do not have disabilities. Presentation of the task, if they are visually impaired, then we ensure that we have Braille for them. If it is the hearing impairment, then we ensure that we do that in the sign language and etc. We can do increasing time for them. We assess them, and then we also increase time for them. So I think that is what I could share. There is quite a lot that we could share in terms of big wins that we have on competency-based assessments. But of course, that has not come with its own challenges, because of we know that change does not come very easily, and therefore changing the teacher to tell them that they have to continuously assess, they have to change paper and pen, and now they have to do a lot of project work, a lot of practical, that is quite engaging. And our country has quite large class sizes, is also some challenge over there, but we are trying to show the benefit of that continuous assessment and so that we can improve learning and not wait until the end of a program and discover that the learners cannot read, cannot write, but to try and correct that in the process of learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, for that was very, very insightful. I think there was so much learning from your presentation. And I want to appreciate that you have brought out clearly the different types of assessments, because there's a lot of confusion around assessment in competency based assessment in itself. And you have told us that how authentic assessments can be done and why they're important. And also the element of bringing in inclusivity in our assessment, because I think that's a major component that's always missing. I like the qualitative reporting that you have mentioned, because for a long time, we engage learners and want to rank them 1, 2, 3, 4. But now it's clear that we are grading them according to based on exceeding those kind of meeting expectations and the likes, which I think is motivating to all our learners. It makes sense for students to go to school and not just be bundled together, lumped together, and be tested on a component. And then at the end of it all, we are all graded as if we all attended and participated in the same, and everything was held constant. So I think the competency-based assessment is going to assist all students to feel that they belong, because so that if I'm weak in this area, then I may be strong in another area, and it makes sense to me. Unlike the content-based, where I would be assessed for mathematics, I'm not good at mathematics, and it makes me a poor student when in English and the rest of the learning areas. Just like to ask us, is there anyone with a question for Anne?
Hello.
Questions for Anne? Yes.
Yes. Christine.
Yes. Go ahead.
Philomene. Yes, I just want to thank Anne for that wonderful presentation, and to tell her that the Gambia did not make any mistake for choosing Kenya as our reference country in our curriculum reform. Indeed, your presentation was excellent, wonderful, and we are still learning from your reform processes, and we will continue learning from your reform processes from your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with a comment or a question for Anne? Yes, go ahead. Okay, someone else.
Yes. Yes, you can.
Philomene.
Yes, Michelle wants to say something.
Now, it's
Yes.
about the inclusive. And here in the Gambia, we have special schools for those children with disabilities. So I would like to ask if you have these children with disabilities integrated in normal schools, or you have their special schools where the teacher will be able to create time for those with disabilities when it comes to assessment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philomene.
Okay.
Anne, are you in a
Thank you,
position to
Michelle.
respond to that?
Yes, I could respond. Yes, I
Thank
think in Kenya, we have schools specifically for learners with special needs. We have actually the competency-based curriculum has introduced 2 pathways. One pathway is for learners. We call it who learn by the acceptable age of being in school. We call it age-based pathway. But in that same pathway, we have learners who have mild disabilities, like hearing impairment, like physical impairment. They learn together in they are mainstreamed in the normal school. But we have another pathway whereby we call it stage-based where learners do not move from one level to another because of their age, but they move because they have acquired the competencies and the skills. And that one, those are learners who have multiple disabilities or very severe disabilities. So those ones, most of the times you'll find that even their kind of curriculum is more to do with the life skills, daily living skills, how they can communicate. Yes, so what we do is that the learners who have physical, we have, what do I say? We have a number of kind of schools. We have integrated schools where learners who have no challenges mix with those who have challenges. But we have specific schools like for the blind. We also have specific schools for hearing impaired, for the deaf. And then we also have schools for mentally challenged, which are pure streamed schools for those particular disabilities. So we have both. We have where we have specific schools, but we have where we have those that have been integrated. And the teachers are also taught how to take care of all those categories of learners.
Thank you, Anne. I can see Damaris says that teacher training institutions also need to train teacher trainees on these assessment methods under CBC. The capacity of the trainers need upgrading. I agree with you. Yeah, teachers need to be trained on these new competencies, especially for the competency-based assessment. Yes, any other?
Maybe we can hear the next presentation because we're getting very short on time, and then we can have some questions at the end. We still have to hear from the Gambia. Mr. Ansu has to present.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Back to you, Marianne.
Philemon, would you like to introduce Mr. Ansu?
Yes, thank you, Christine. Thank you, Marianne, and thank you, Anne, as well. Our presenter from the Gambia is Mr. Ansu Sanyang. Mr. Ansu works at the Curriculum Research, Evaluation and Development Directorate as a curriculum developer and also a senior education officer. He is also responsible for the coordination of literacy programs in the directorate and also in charge of assessment issues in the directorate. So I'll hand you over to Ansu, who will talk us through interesting issues when it comes to assessment in the Gambia. He will tell us where we are today, what our hope is for our country, and what we want to achieve in terms of assessment and learning in our country. Thank you. Ansu.
Thank you, Philomena. And good afternoon or morning, wherever you are. I would like to say thank you to our big brother, Kenya. I can remember some time ago, we went to Kenya for a study tour on this competency-based curriculum. We learned a lot. And today also we have learned a lot from what they are doing. So like my sister Philomena have said, we will continue learning from the Kenya experience in trying to develop our competency-based curriculum. Currently, we are trying to pilot. We have done some work. We are trying to pilot. So we will go into our presentation. Today, we will look at 4 areas in terms of how assessment is currently done in the Gambia. And these areas will look like the type of assessment the Gambia is currently doing. We'll also look at whether we are satisfied with our current assessment policies or not. Also, we will look at the type of assessment that the Gambia wishes to introduce. And the last part will look at the assessment, whether they are important for us or not. So these are the areas that we will be focusing more on. Next slide, please. Now, what are the types of assessment does the Gambia currently use? Just to remind everybody, we currently using the content-based curriculum. And as a country, because of our use of that content-based curriculum, focus is more of summative assessment, even though there are policies that looks at the other types of assessment, which is formative or diagnostic or whatever. So basically, these are the three that we look at. We will look at the school-based assessment, or some people will call it as the classroom-based assessment. We also have a type of assessment that we refer to as the school circle certification examinations. We will elaborate on this. And we have the national large-scale assessments like EGRA and EGMA that we conduct in the Gambia. So when we look at the school-based assessment or the classroom-based assessment, this is where we have the assessment done at the level of the school. And it is mostly organized and assessed. Everything is done by the teacher. Now, in this type of assessment, yes, we have policies that states that we need to have, for example, 3 assessments in a term. For example, every month, we need to conduct an assessment. And this will be done, the questions, whatever, will be set by the teacher. And then we will do the marking, give them grades. So what is the focus of this assessment? Because our content, our curriculum is based on content, we focus more on grading the children. Okay, at the end of the day, you have scored, let's say 40 out of 100, or you have scored 60 out of 100. That is the focus. The purpose of it in the beginning is for us to improve our teaching and learning. But because the curriculum is based on content, there is that shift where teachers will focus more on summative assessment. How well or how much have my students been able to score in an examination? So at the level of the classroom, that is what we do. The next type of assessment that we conduct, like I said in the beginning, is what we refer to as schools circle certification examinations. Now, here we have 2 stages. That is because we have a basic education which starts from grade 1 up to grade 9, and then we have the secondary education which starts from grade 10 up to grade 12. So at each of these end levels, they are supposed to conduct examinations. We are supposed to conduct examinations, and they will be graded because the schools will be competing. How many of our students are able to produce passes that will, or students that will proceed to the other level? If it is grade 9, how many of them are able to proceed to grade 10? And then if it is grade 12, how many of them are able to get a number of credits taking them to tertiary institutions? So this is another type of examination. Because the curriculum currently is focused on content-based, assessment is more of summative, and teachers will focus more on the content. How do they recall facts, in the examinations? So those are the things that we do at this stage, even though the intention is for us to be able to place students at different levels at the end of the day. And the last part, which is the national skill assessment, here we look at 2 areas. That is the EGRA, which look at the early grade reading assessment, or the EGMA, which looks at the early grade mathematics assessment. But in the country, we also have what we call NAT. NAT is just it's a national achievement test, not to be used for placement or to be used for grading the abilities of the students. It's just for us to be able to test what the students are able to do at a particular stage. So that NAT assessment is done in grade 3, in grade 5, and then in grade 8. So these are the 3 levels of assessments that we currently do as a country. Next slide, please. Now we will move to the next item, which will look at I've already discussed this, that is the national scale assessment, where we have the NAT, or the EGRA, and the EGMA. So now, how satisfied is the Gambia with its current assessment policies? Now, we have a document called the School Management Manual, and that School Management Manual looks at how assessments are to be done in the Gambia. It directs schools at minimum what are the types of assessment that you should do and what is the frequency that you should do those assessments. But also it is critical that if you look at the organization, the planning, the implementation of those assessments, to have reliability and the validity will be a very big challenge for us. Because, for example, if you look at the classroom-based assessment, there is no standardization of the assessments. Mostly, teachers will just sit aside and draft questions, asking the students to do this or that in their assessment, whether it is using any type or any of the tools that they normally are supposed to use. They don't care about that much because the focus is about content. At the end of the day, what are the facts that or the knowledge that our students can come up with? So in most cases, it ends into rote learning where the students will just be trying to recall. For example, in the EGRA, we realized, for example, if the students are able to recognize, asked to recognize the letters of the alphabet, you will see students saying A, B, C. If you saw them where is A, you will ask them to show A or B or C, they cannot. So at the end of the day, we don't achieve our objective. So the policies, we have seen that we deviate from our aims and objectives. We have mainly deviated from those aims and objectives. So there is a need for basically to reform the assessment policies that we have in the country. Next slide, please. Okay, now, what type of assessment does the Gambia wish to introduce? Like our big brothers in Kenya have demonstrated or shown in the presentations, as a country, we wish to move from a content-based assessment to a competency-based assessment. Now, this shift will definitely help us in trying to look at the capability of the learners in terms of the knowledge, skills, values, and the attitudes that they may have. Now, what are these skills? These skills are our Kenyan brothers have talked about. For example, when it comes to communication skills, collaboration skills, critical thinking, problem solving. So those types of skills are very important when we are trying to do this competency-based assessment. Okay, next slide. Now, why is assessment reform important for the Gambia? Now, assessment reform is important because it will help us set more appropriate targets for the students. That is very critical because if you look at the strategy that we are now using, because our focus is more on content-based, and we want to move away from content-based to competency-based curriculum, then there is that need for us to also change to a competency-based assessment. That is why it is very important. Right now, the directorate is working on reforming the curriculum, and we sorry. Okay. In terms of revising the syllabus, we've done that. We developed a revised curriculum framework. We have looked at training guides and assessment guides. We have developed all those ones, and then we have identified some schools that we're going to pilot our competency-based curriculum. That is already kickstarting. Maybe any moment from now, we will be in the schools to do that. So for us, moving away from the previous ways of assessment, which is more of summative, content-based, it is very critical that we move to a competency-based assessment. That is what where we are moving to. So basically, when we look at the next slide, which looks at the types of the assessment, like, for example, if you look at the CBA, that is the competency-based assessment, we will focus on the learner's ability to apply knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values in real-life situations. We also believe that the move will help us to improve learning and instruction. It will also help us identify and nurture learner potentials, measure learners' acquisition of the various values that are identified in the curriculum framework, and also help us provide feedback to the stakeholders. Stakeholders in any assessment, they are very critical in the sense that it helps for management, it helps the parents, the learners, and everybody that is involved in education to play their rightful roles. So basically, the move from content-based assessment to a competency-based assessment is critical for the country. And as we have stated earlier, we definitely will continue to learn from the Kenya experience, how far they have gone, what they have done. We will continue to learn from their experience. The last part, which is on the piloting, currently as a sector, we have revised the curriculum in these subjects, that is English, maths, science, and then social studies, from grade 1 to grade 9. That is already underway. We have developed some materials like the teacher's guide, learner's books, implementation guide, and the assessment guides that are already done. Also, we have identified for piloting, we have identified about 20 schools and up to 260 teachers will take part in that piloting. Also, we have schools and teachers already. We have supplied these schools that are identified, that's the 20 schools, and then the teachers who are identified with the materials like the syllabi, the curriculum materials, the teachers' guides. All those materials are supplied to all the identified schools and then teachers. So basically, this is the stage we are as a country. And like I said in the beginning, we will continue to learn from the Kenya experience. Thank you very much, Supra.
Mr. Ansu, thank you so much. Brilliant.
Okay.
Philemon, over to you for a discussion.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Ansu Sanyang, for that wonderful deliberation on the competency-based assessment. Thank you for pointing out the Gambia's stage or stand right now as I speak, that is the summative form of assessment. And also thank you for telling the whole world about the Gambia's positive move of changing from that summative to the formative type of assessment that will help learners to achieve knowledge, skills, as well as the values that the society needs for betterment. Thank you, my brother. Yeah. Okay, next, I think we have to move for the question and answers. Do anyone have questions for Mr. Ansu Sanyang on his presentation about the Gambia's assessment processes? Please raise up your hands if you have any question. Yes, I can see John Mara's hand up. Mr. Balamara.
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much for Mr. Sanya's presentation and giving us the real picture of how assessment has been done in the Gambia and the step the government or the ministry has taken to make sure they make a shift from the content-based to that of a competency-based. And if I could remember the last slide, it showed us the school and the teachers they are targeting as a pilot, if so to speak, if I'm correct. I want to know what has been the response by teachers and schools. You know, change sometimes is very, very, very difficult. People hardly accept changes. You know, more especially they have been in their comfort zone, just making assessment just to have placement for grading or percentage, which they have been in that one. I want to know what has been the response by the teachers and some of the school authorities because of this kind of shift they want to do. Thank you so much again, Mr. Sanya, for this wonderful presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, John Bala. Right now, we have not interacted with the teachers with this mode of assessment that we intend to do. We're trying to pilot it. We've just identified all the schools that we intend to have the pilot and the teachers who will take part in the piloting. They will soon go through a training. From then they can go into the implementation of the revised curriculum. So right now, they have not tested any of these modes of assessment that we're talking about here. All right. So it's just a matter of starting the pilot.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Mercy,
Yeah.
your hand is up.
Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted to ask what my colleague has just asked to Mr. Ansu. So because the response is that they haven't yet done it, they now just advise Mr. Ansu Sayang that they should try as much as possible during the piloting to make their teachers. They should involve teachers. If they are not part of this, they become more problematic when it comes to practicality, when we want to implement this. So if you don't involve the teachers, Mister, you'll be in trouble because they are the ones who are the implementers of this. You know, assessment is so important. So I had the same question. Now that you are going to pilot, yeah, please involve those teachers. It should be their own, like asking them questions. Look, the way we are assessing our students, we are only focusing on the content, but we know no student is dull. Some students are good in mathematics, but not good in geography. Some students are good in history, but they may not be good in mathematics. So if we assess on a base, okay, some students are good on manipulative skills. For example, in agriculture, you can ask a student to make a fence. He will come up with a very good fence, but in class, to write and do all those essays, that student cannot manage. So that means that student has got that skill of coming up with something. So you start with asking the teachers, look at the way we are assessing students, especially those that are in community-based secondary schools, because of the way the government sometimes selects. You find that those in community-based secondary schools are students that may be, in terms of content-based assessment, they are victimized, but they have some skills that they can demonstrate those students. So if you involve the teachers and you tell them that, look the way we assess our learners on the content, we are victimized these ones who have got manipulative skills, they can come up with this, they can clean the environment, they can build something with their hands. So if we do like that concept of differentiation, when you assess our learners, so it will be some of those teachers, those who are not resistant to change, who will be suggesting, what if we shift? What if we combine? Then we move slowly. What if we combine competence-based assessment, which is of more advantage to many students? And I've liked the point that you said, they provide evidence of accountability. It's really true. So that's just my advice, maybe without wasting more time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marcy. I think this is good advice. If you look at the revision of the curriculum we have just done, we tried as much as possible to involve classroom teachers in all the 4 subjects, from the revision of the syllabi, the development of materials, that's the learners' materials, the development of the assessment guide. Teachers, classroom teachers will be called across the country to come and take part in those developments. So I am certain that we will involve them, we will continue to involve them, because we learned that when we went to Kenya to learn the best practices there. So I think, thank you for the advice. I think we will continue using the teachers in this piloting and then the rolling out nationally. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matthew, for that wonderful advice. Thank you, John, for that question. Any other question from anyone? Team Gambia, do you have any question? Okay. Okay. Since we don't have much time, it seems we have run into our time now. No. I will quickly read out. Yes. Yes, Mercy.
I had a question. A question to Madam Annie.
Okay.
It's just it was a good presentation, but I just wanted to know, I'm much interested in the part of the ICT assessment, whereby the schools are uploading the assessments on the students' portal, and then the students have to download and write those assessments. Now the question is, what's the percentage of the schools in Kenya that are able to do that?
Good question. Madam Annie?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mercy. Yes, it's a good question, of course, leading to wanting to know whether every school is able to do that. All our public schools were given, they have 2 laptops and they have projectors, but they probably not all schools have been able to install a printer. But majority of the schools do have. But the recent study that we tried to do, we were able to see around 50% were able to access directly from the portal. But you'll find that there are those, I think, others who wait and then they get access from the neighboring school. And those are some of the challenges that we are trying to solve as a country. So not every school is able to print in the school, but other ways that we are encouraging is that most of the public primary schools were issued with digital learning devices, or what we call the tablets. So we have been encouraging them that they can download onto those tablets with some connection, that some adapter. And instead of printing, then they can access the questions on the tablets and they can answer on the exercise books or on foolscaps, which reduces on the cost of printing. We also have schools that have been innovative and using the projectors that they have been given by the government, are able to project the questions. Those that really are in those far-flung areas, they can project the questions. But yes, the challenge is there that not every school is able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, come. Hello, a staff from my end has a question, please.
Excuse me, I have a question regarding something you talked about, the portfolio. The portfolio, is it only applied to all subjects or it is to use for specific subjects? Because in language teaching, I mean, that portfolio is something that is very important. I wanted to find out how the usage is done in your assessment process. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With the portfolio, mostly we recommend it when we are doing the project so that the learner can document each and every process, each and every stage of how they carried out the project. But we also train the teachers on how to develop a portfolio, and this can be used for any subject. because it is more about documentation of the process and also the product. It's about giving the learner opportunity to keep reflecting on the task at hand and keep, documenting, and also it gives an opportunity for even the parent to look at what the learner is doing and make some comment. So we recommend it for the project, but it can be used for any subject.
Thank you for that elaboration. Any more question? Okay, in the absence
Yes.
of questions, I think I will quickly go through. Yes.
A question
Yes.
to Ansu. Ansu.
Yes,
Yes.
he can hear
Yes.
you.
How many subjects do they offer in their classes, and what criteria do they use for the assessment? That is the choice of the subjects to be assessed.
Can you come again with the second part of the question?
The first one was, how many subjects do you offer at in the schools? And the second part is, what criteria do you use for selection of the subjects which you assess on?
Oh, okay. For the number of subjects, I think there are about 9 at basic education level. That is grades 7 to 9. And then for grade 1 to 6, we have core subjects, that is English, maths, science, and integrated for 1 and 3, plus social studies for 4 and 4 to 6. So we have about 7 for that grade level. Now, in terms of the selection or the criteria for assessment, there is an assessment policy, but it has not been validated. That is why we didn't talk about that. But currently, they are assessed in all the subjects that they are offering. That is what we have for the assessment of the students in the various subjects. My colleagues can say something. Yeah, we have mentioned the 4 core subjects that we have. No, that is for grade 7 to 9. When they get to grade 9, that's the time they look at like the terminal exams that we have at grade 9. We mentioned GABESE, which is a certification exam. So when they read there, they have 4 core subjects: English, math, science, and social studies, plus 3 other elective subjects. Okay, so that could be in the technical area, like home science, metalwork, woodwork, or whatever. So we have also got the religious education, Islamic or Christian knowledge. So those are that's the criteria we have for at that level. That is the basic education level when they get to grade 9.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Amsu Sanya. Any more questions? Okay. If there is none, then I quickly read through the reflection questions. Bullet point 1 says, what have you learned about competency-based assessment or assessment reform today? That is the presentation that we've just had on from the two presenters, Kenya and the Gambia. Next, what recommendations will you make to your government about assessment reform? Then the last one says, what next step can you take? With whom can you share information from today's meeting? Now, on this last bullet point, I think we should be agents of change to our societies based on what we have had today or at our different ministries where we work. We've learned a lot from Kenya as well as the Gambia. We also learned from why Gambia is thinking of shifting from just content-based to knowledge-based, which I think we are in, yes, content to competency-based, which the whole world is advocating for, where learners can achieve knowledge, skills, as well as attitudes that can be very meaningful for societal development. Thank you very much. Marianne, over to you.
Solomon, thank you for that wonderful set of reflection questions. They are here on the screen, and we're hoping that you think about them. Think about what kind of takeaways you have taken from today's meeting. I think for me, I've taken away a lot. I really took away something, some learning about how these discussions should happen in the future when we meet online. When I saw questions directly from the Gambia to Kenya, I thought that was really helpful to see the discussion really between two countries. Kenya has already revised its curriculum and its assessment policies and is moving forward with that. The Gambia is just taking that step, just beginning that step. So for me, I think I was really inspired to see the comparison of the two countries and to see the learning that took place there within each country and then cross-country. So I'm sure that we all have similar learning takeaways from today and things that inspired you. I'd like to ask my colleague Hundessa if he's still online to show a survey link in which we will ask you to write down very quickly for us what you've learned from today's session. So Hundessa, would you be able to share your screen and show us the survey link? Are you online? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marian. Thank you, everyone, for your active participation and for your contribution to today's session. It was really wonderful. Now it is time to hear from you, your thoughts and the feelings, how the session went. And I would like to have a response from you through this short mini survey, which is about 6 questions, and asks in the background information, where you are from, and your role, and your satisfaction with today's webinar or today's session, and what most important thing you have learned into today about competency-based assessments, and if there are any new policies or practice options which you might have identified that will fit to your context, please respond to us. And also would also love to hear from you 1 or 2 things that you have learned about assessment strengthening from the national examples of Kenya and the Gambia. And finally, we would like to hear from you, what will you still like to learn about assessment in our future community of practice? Thank you very much. I'll put this survey link into the chat box. Kindly respond to us, as it will be helpful to us to know how you found this the session today. Thank you very much. Back to you, Maria.
Hundessa, excellent. Thank you for showing us the survey. And everyone, I think that you've probably picked up on the fact that this is an example of a formative assessment. This survey, it's in a way, it could be considered summative. It's happening at the end of the session today, but it will also become formative because we will see you again next month in March, and we'll use your responses here to improve and shape the next session. And we can see from your responses whether we should have another session on assessment. You know, maybe we should have 1 or 2 more meetings about the same topic if you feel that there's an area that you wanted to know more about that we didn't get to today. So in a way, this is a summative assessment, but it's going to become formative. We're using it to form future learning encounters with all of you. So please do take it. It'll just take a couple minutes, 3-5 minutes of your time. And Hundessa has shared the link in the chat box. Could I ask Gabriel if you'd be able to show us where everyone can find future resources on this topic from today, and also the group photo? Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Marianne. Thank you, everyone. So I would like to share 2 resources or 2 sources of resources that you can go to in case you want more information about competency-based education. The first is from a community of practice that we did with the African Curriculum Association in 2021. And so that is the first link here, and you can find resources on competency-based assessment resource pack, on teacher professional development, competency-based education, and so forth. The second area that we'd like to share is also on the ICBA website. And so we had another community of practice with the Tanzanian Institute of Education, and they provided an array of resources. And so you are able to find those resources at the bottom of the second link. And so you'll be able to see presentations on the role of experiential learning in secondary schools, as well as the meeting recordings. The second part of this is like, I was hoping we were hoping to take one more group photo. We really enjoyed and missed your smiles, and I think there have been more participants that joined from the beginning of the meeting until now. And so if it's possible for everyone to switch on the camera one more time, just so we can take one more photo, that would be very much appreciated. All right, I think we nearly have everyone. Thank you so much for those who have turned on their cameras. We're just waiting on a couple more. If you get 2 or 3 more, I think that would be a great group photo. I think we're missing Team Gambia. Philemon, is it possible for you to switch on your camera?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Great, wonderful. All right.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. All right, one more. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, colleagues.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next month for the next meeting, and our facilitators, Christine and Philemon, will be in touch with you about the
Thank
topic
you.
for next time.
Thank you,
See you
Marianne.
soon.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Philemon.
Thank you for the
Bye.
great discussions. What a
Christine,
great
bye.
session we had.
See you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Marianne and the team. Bye, everybody. Wish you well.
Bye, everyone. See you next month.
Bye.
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 Bye,
Bye.
Janet.
See you next month.
Bye, John. Always great participation, John.
Yeah,
It
Marianne,
was wonderful.
thank you.
You always have great ideas.
Yes, thank you.
And Mercy, you
Thank
too.
you. Thank you,
You had great
Marianne.
things to say today.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye, Ruben. Bye, Gretchen, Ruben. See you next time then. Thanks for taking part. Goodbye, Philemon and Team Gambia. All of you were wonderful today.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Wonderful job. Excellent. And see you next month.
Okay, see you.
Okay, goodbye, Janet and George. Thank you for joining today. We'll see you next month, and we'll hear from everyone what the topic should be. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Handasa and Karu, for all your support for today. Gabriel, thanks so much. Really appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you.
much.
All right, all the best, and get some rest. It's 6 o'clock now in Addis.
Yes, thank you very much, Marianne.
All right, bye everyone. Thanks so much. See you
Bye.
soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was really impressive. Thank you.
Fun.